Good day, everyone. This is Yolandi from the Bible in 1 Year, and today we are reading from Leviticus chapter 27, the final section of the book of Leviticus. It details the regulations for voluntary vows, the consecration of people and property, and how giving a portion of crops or land should be handled. The chapter starts with the following words in verse 2, and I'm reading it from the King James translation. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When a man shall make a singular vow, the persons shall be for the Lord by thy estimation. These are important words to pay attention to, as they set the foundation for the rest of the chapter. The meaning of the word singular in singular vow means something marvelous or wonderful, but also something beyond one's own power. In other words, something difficult to do. And the word vow in singular vow means to promise something to God or to give or do something for God. So, this chapter is essentially about making a meaningful promise to God, one that requires faith, especially because it may be beyond your own strength. The vows and consecrations in this chapter further relate to gifts people freely promise to God, rather than what the law required. And what a fitting way to end the book of Leviticus, not with a burden of laws that are nearly impossible to keep, but with a willing, personal commitment to God. It is also important to note that it was not a sin to not make a vow, but once a vow was made, it had to be kept. You can read the confirmation of this in Deuteronomy 23, verses 21 to 23. In verses 3 to 7 of this chapter, we read the value assigned to different groups of people if one wanted to dedicate a person to God. So instead of literally giving the person, a set amount of money was rather paid. In verse 8, we see a provision for the poor, showing that God did not want anyone to be unable to fulfill a vow of consecration because they lacked money. And in a modern society, this proves to us that anyone can give their life to the Lord and that no one is too small, too insignificant, or without purpose. God desires to use each and every person. Verses 9 to 27 explains how things dedicated to God, like animals, houses, and land, were to be handled. If someone devoted an animal that was acceptable for sacrifice, it became holy and couldn't be exchanged. If the animal was unclean, or if someone dedicated property like a house or land, a value was set, and the person could buy it back by adding an extra amount. Verses 28 and 29 explains that it was impossible to redeem possessions or persons because dedicating something to the Lord was a step beyond a vow of consecration. So anything permanently dedicated to the Lord could not be sold or bought back. It was considered set apart and therefore belonged to God. The chapter ends with the payment of tithes, something that is heavily debated in the church today. And although the New Testament does not command tithing, it encourages giving as a responsibility of God's people. And as we saw with the singular vow in the beginning of this chapter, tithing should also be understood as part of our willing, personal commitment to God, giving freely, in faith, what God places on our hearts to give to His body. To finish this chapter, I want to read a verse from 2 Corinthians 9, verse 7, as we read it in the Amplified Translation. Let each one give thoughtfully and with purpose, just as he has decided in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver and delights in the one whose heart is in his gift. May you have a blessed day. Goodbye.